Just to introduce myself to everyone, I am Sanjana from Ibpath. Ibpath is an initiative that my co-founder Ilaan and I founded almost over a year ago. And we just aim to help IB students, IB MYP and DP students from all over the world, just connecting them with resources, maybe teachers, maybe just any sort of skills that you would need to excel in the IB. And we've partnered with Tychr for today to conduct this webinar on Math AA. So Math AA is a subject, Math AA HL is a subject that I think everyone wants to know more about. So this is something that we have organized for that. From Tychr, we have Ms. Tanushi, who's a very well-experienced teacher. She's taught over 10,000 plus hours of Math AA. So that just tells you, the kind of insight that she can draw and give you about the subject. And then we also have Dheer, who actually got a 7 on his Math AHL final exam. So he's someone that can really give you the students' insight as to what it takes to get a 7 on Math AHL and what his experience was like. And obviously, we want you to use this webinar as an opportunity to ask any questions that you have and get your doubts cleared about Math AHL. Another thing is Ilaan and I both took AASL, so we'd be able to answer any questions you might have about that as well. And we can also draw some comparisons and maybe show you how exactly the two levels compare to each other in terms of time commitment, in terms of the effort required, because that's a question many of you might have at this stage when you're selecting your subjects.
Yeah, and just to add on to what Sanjana said, also the relative difficulty of both the courses. Comparing exactly like how much work is required in SL versus HL. So is there a stark contrast? Is it limited? These are the sort of things that we will also be discussing in this webinar. And we'll also be discussing the scenarios in which, a student should consider taking AHL. So yeah, I mean, with this webinar, we essentially aim to break down this seemingly daunting and challenging decision into more considerable steps. And we also aim to give you advice that if you have obviously committed to AHL, how you can excel in the subject.
Yeah. And I'll just ask Ms. Tanushi to speak a little bit about Tychr as an organization, which she is a part of.
Hi, everyone. So I'm a part of Tychr. I take math all levels. So Tychr is all about helping you guys with IB. We are academic tutors. We have a holistic approach. So we go from PYP till DP. We have live classes, recorded sessions. We help with the IAs, TOKs, extended essays, A to Z, everything. We also help with standardized tests like SAT, ACT, AP, everything. Another thing that Tychr helps you with is college consulting. That includes building your profile, your CV, your LOR, SOP, everything. So overall, anything that you need during your school years, during your DP years is something that we provide.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Tanushi. And Dheer, would you like to speak a little bit about just your background, your student profile?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Dheer. I graduated from the IB this year in May 2024. I took Math A at a higher level, and again, I'm just looking forward to giving back to the IB community and just helping everyone that needs guidance in selecting an ASL or an AHL and just what to expect from the course in general.
Thank you so much, Dheer. So I think we have enough people in the webinar. So what we'll do is we'll just get right to it. First thing, something that we want to discuss at the very beginning was under what circumstances do you really choose AHL? So we do want to make it very clear, something maybe even Dheer took into consideration when he chose AHL is what you wish to pursue in your studies after high school, right? So after you finish DP, the kind of degree that you want to pursue, does it require the level of rigor and math that AHL has, or your university requirements, the country that you would like to apply to? So these are all considerations you need to make when you're choosing which level of analysis and approaches you wish to take, right? So there are many degrees, many universities for which ASL is more than enough. But of course, there are many like UK, for example, if you would like to go into engineering, AHL with a very good grade, usually a 6 or a 7 is something that is required. So something you have to keep in mind is you have to work very closely with experts in this field. So like a college counselor, speak to your peers who have already graduated, like Dheer over here, who will also tell us a little bit more about why he chose AHL and how it has helped him in his university. And also, that you are actually passionate about the subject, because you need to be interested in math to be able to take it at that level, because it requires a lot of effort from your side, and you'd only be able to give that effort, you'd only be able to put that much time and energy into the subject if it is something that appeals to you, right? So don't take AHL just for the name, just because it looks good on your transcript, okay? Because the point is to do well in AHL. It's not an impossible task. There's many students who excel in it, like Dheer, but it is definitely a difficult task. So Dheer, can you tell us a little bit more about why you took AHL?
Yeah, sure. So again, like you mentioned, your career options is a very important part in your subject selection in the 11th and 12th grade. And for me personally, I always wanted to do something in STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. In fact, I'm planning on majoring in biology or like biochemistry. And after speaking to experts, after speaking to college counselors, what they do recommend is that for any STEM related degree as such, math AA, its analysis and approaches at the higher level, would be beneficial for you, not only content wise and in terms of what the syllabus teaches you, but also from a university perspective where they really appreciate the rigor and difficulty that students in high school take up, right? An AHL by no means is an easy course. So when you decide to take courses like AHL and when you excel at it, it just shows that you're prepared for college. You're able to handle complex tasks, and I think that's something that's important when you consider university admissions in the 12th grade when you apply. So for me personally, it was obviously one major factor being that I wanted to major in a STEM related degree, and the second thing was that I wanted to show universities, I wanted to show the colleges where I was applying to that. Yeah, I'm a student that is able to cope up with the demands of college, and also like I'm prepared for the difficulties that college throws at me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Dheer. Miss Tanushi, I wanted to ask you, like Dheer said, there are many students, right, who want to go into the STEM field in college, they're not exactly sure, but they know that they want to pursue something in the STEM field, for whom succeeding in AHL in the DP is very important. So how, in your experience, how do you think students need to prepare for it in the summer before DP?
Right. So I would say AHL needs a very good math base, a very good base from MYP or CBSE or whichever board you are from. So your basic understanding of math should be extremely good before you jump into the syllabus. So you want to first check your preliminary topics. If you're good at that, you need, if you feel that you were weak in a certain topic during your 10th grade, maybe revise that first, maybe practice that first before diving into AHL. And once you're done with that, once you think that your basics are all clear and you're all set to dive in, then you should begin the basics of AAHL. You should start with first basics of the, and not try to complete entire units before the school starts. You don't need to do that. You will do that during your school years. Just grab the basic ideas of the first 3 units. That's number and algebra, functions, and geometry and trigonometry. If you know the very basic idea, when you sit in the class, things will make sense. It won't all be like, oh my God, what's happening? I don't understand. You'll be more connected with the teacher. Because if you know the basic idea, if the teacher gets a little ahead, thinking that, okay, no, my students have done well in 10th grade, they don't need this basic knowledge, you'll be able to connect well. So that's how you should practice during summer and not just go into the harder parts of AHL, because that is going to happen later.
And one
Yeah.
more thing that I'd like to add to what Mr. Nushi said, aside from having a strong strong base in mathematics, which is very important. Though I took ASL, I found this to be very helpful for me, because my grade was able to increase significantly implementing this trick. It's a question of also defining your skills, essentially like your ability to sort of transfer knowledge from one area to another. And when you have a strong math base, what that allows you to do is it allows you to make connections. And when you develop an approach, in which you have clarity in your working, when you don't just write things down mindlessly on paper, it helps you to make connections in the sort of trickier questions that you would encounter in AHL, and it sharpens your problem solving skills, right? Which is what math is. Fundamentally, it's breaking down and solving problems. So when you develop an approach, whether it be with your writing or whatever you need to have that clarity of thought. So this is something that you can work on over the summer, even with trickier questions of the syllabus you've done. You need to work on developing a fine combing the question, extracting relevant details, and using them to come up with an answer. When you refine this approach, your capabilities skyrocket.
Yeah. And Ms. Tanushi, you mentioned that you do need a strong base in mathematics, right, before you decide to take on AHL. So how exactly can students gauge their performance or their grip over mathematical concepts other than just purely grades? Because I'm sure you've also come across students who are maybe doing average in MYP or in ICSE, but then they've put in the work and they've gotten to a 6 or 7 in AHL. So how does a student, other than the grades that they are getting, gauge their level of mathematics in the 10th grade, whatever board they're in?
I would say their accuracy and their speed. They need to check with that. So AAHL involves a good amount of manual calculations compared to AI. Paper one is all without the GDC. So you have to do manual calculations in your head a lot. So you need to practice algebra questions, trigonometry, basic stuff, solving quadratics, finding roots of quadratics. These kind of things you can practice even from the 9th and 10th grade books, and just check how accurate you are with your answers and how fast you are. If you're doing it very slow, that's not going to work. There's a time limit to our paper. If your accuracy is bad, no, that's not going to work. Even if you are able to solve it later, it won't matter. So you need to sit and evaluate whether things are coming out as you expect them to, and not just simply do the math and say, okay, I've practiced, I know this. No, you can't do. You know a concept, but you don't know how to approach the question, how to get it accurate and fast. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense,
Another
Mr. Tanushi.
another
Go on, please.
again, like I'd like to add to what Tanushi said, was that uh like she rightly mentioned, the accuracy of the answer. Even when you look at mark schemes for the AHL papers, past papers, you see that you often you get marks for the working as well. So it's also important to know that you're going in the right direction, apart from just getting the right answer, right? That there's marks allotted to the correct steps, the correct working, and then finally the correct answer. So a good way to see if you're prepared for the AHL course is also to see if you're approaching the question in the right direction. If you know how to solve the question, and then obviously there are times that you make silly mistakes where you may lose your way while solving a question. But the main, like the fundamental aspect of answering a tricky AHL question would just be getting the approach right, and then obviously the accuracy comes with it.
There's one more thing that I've seen in students. When they're solving a question which has manual calculations, a lot of algebraic steps, they make a silly error in between. And then when they redo it, they make the same error again. It's some human mind thing that you just make the same error once again. And you think, no, it's correct. I did all correct. So what works in this sense is that you leave that question for a few minutes, go to the next one, come back at it after a while, and then reattempt it. And now you'll be able to identify what error you made in between. So just give it a break. Don't just instantly start to solve it from the top again.
Yeah,
I
I'd
think
like to add to this because I struggle with this personally a lot myself, making silly mistakes, as it were. So I think another thing also is, especially this is not relevant exactly this summer, but when you're writing an exam, during an exam, you have to make an effort, you have to make a very conscious effort to keep an open mind. Because what that does is it helps you to spot your own errors. It's a question of even though there is a time pressure, there is a time limit, it's a question of sort of consciously slowing yourself down. And it's a question of finding that balance between being slow and careful and being on pace. So if you are able to, once your mathematical base is strong enough and you're able to do things cautiously, you will be able to solve the paper on time and accurately.
Yeah, and because you mentioned solving the paper on time, I want to actually pose this question to both Ms. Tanushi and Dheer. So time management during papers, right? I think that's one of the most important and pressing issues that students have, whether in HL, AHL or SL. But I think definitely more trickier for AHL. So for the students who have already committed to AHL, what advice would you give them? And they've already started learning. Maybe they've already completed TP1. What can they do at this stage to improve their time management, right? Because you need, like Dheer mentioned, you need the accuracy, but then you also have to do it within the given time, right? Because you can't,
And
because it doesn't matter if you get the right answer if it's too late. So what can you tell us about time management when approaching the three papers for this subject?
if there's any specific anecdotes that you'd like
Yeah.
to share for the three papers, separately, that would also be, I mean, most welcome.
Yes, definitely. Maybe we can go to paper one first. So
Yeah,
that's
I
the
think
non-GTC paper.
for paper 1 and 2, the approach is quite similar, according to me. What you can do is the first step is to go through the entire paper. Uh, just read every question briefly. Not just read word to word, but just go through it to understand, okay, these are the topics in the paper, this is what I have to attempt. And now you know your strong points. You've studied for so long, you know that what you're good at and what you might struggle in. And you begin with the questions that you think you'll be able to answer easily. You first finish them off, keep them aside. You're done with that. And then you move on through the paper once again and you pick out the questions which you think, okay, now I'll be able to solve these. Like the 3 times that you can go through the paper. One is where you pick up the easy ones. Second is where you take the medium ones, and then you go to the hard ones. So that way you'll be able to have more time for the hard ones. On an average for paper 1 and 2, you need to give 1 minute to 1 mark. So it's a 6 marker question, it's a 6 minute question, but that's an average thing. If you're good at a topic, you might be able to solve a 6 marker in 3 minutes. It's possible. And then the harder ones might take a longer time. So it's about an average that you need to work with. So first is to just get the easy ones done, the medium ones, and the hard ones. So when by the time you're at the hard ones, you have a good chunk of time left, and you know that I've saved some marks for myself, so I'm not going to fail. So and if you just jump onto the hard ones, waste a lot of time there, and then you go to the easy ones, so you don't have time to attempt them, but you knew them. So I think that should be the approach for paper 1 and 2. And as for paper 3 always has to go in the same order as it is. There are 2 questions. You can always decide on doing which one first, but the question goes in the same order. There's always a pattern to it. They're always connected. So if there are, let's say, 12 parts to a question, so when you do the first, second, and third part, those results might be used in the fourth and fifth part. That actually happens. There's always a pattern, and if you go with that pattern, it becomes very easy. If you can make that connection, the whole paper becomes extremely easy, and you'll be able to do it in the required time. Be a lot of time.
Yeah, and yeah, so coming back to paper 1 and paper 2, again, like Ms. Lightly mentioned, it's practically 1 mark for 1 minute. That's what even my teachers have told me, and that's what we've always been taught, that like if you have an 8 mark question, if you have a 6 mark question, you have 8 minutes and you have 6 minutes. Again, like Ms. mentioned again, was that if you know your strong points, let's say you're really good with geometry, or if you're really good with functions, or you can solve those questions faster, right? And that saves you that extra 2-3 minutes, which you can then allocate to harder questions that you might find tricky. Another tip that I would suggest was like maximize the 5 minutes of reading time that you have. Again, go through the paper, skim through it, and you understand that, okay, the first question is on numbers and algebra, the second one is on, let's say, geometry, the last one is on calculus. You have a general overview of what is expected from you, and then once you have the time to start writing, okay, my mind now has to focus on the functions part of what I've studied, or now I need to incorporate my calculus knowledge into the question. So it just becomes that process becomes faster, saving you that extra time, because if I'm being very honest, like every second, every minute counts in the AHL papers. It's very tight on time, and like I know from experience, my friends, my peers, even me, for example, like I've skipped a couple of questions at the start because I didn't have time to complete it. And then over time, once I realized strategies, once I understood how to really tackle the paper, that's when I could finish it in time and have some time left to recheck. So yeah, that definitely helps for sure.
And I also feel that a student can develop their own approach. The more papers you attempt, the better you understand that what works for you. So what we're saying might not work for you. You might work with a different approach. You might develop your own, but that would mean a lot of practice, a lot of time restrained practice where you put a timer and you attempt a paper at home by yourself. That's where you can develop your own approaches on how would you like to attempt the paper. And one more thing that I've seen with my students is, especially AHL students, now there's rigorous algebra going on. There's complex numbers and trigonometry combined, some big expressions coming up. What they do is, if something is not coming out of something, they still keep on working on that and waste their time on that question. Don't do that. It's okay. If it's a 3-4 marker, 6 marker question and you're not able to get it, that doesn't mean you will spoil the rest of the paper. Let that be. Gain the marks out of the rest of the paper and don't bother yourself with that. They feel that, oh, I studied so much for complex numbers, I studied so much for trigonometry, I should get this right. Your idea is not to showcase what you did. Your idea is to gain marks out of the paper. So do what gets you the marks. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate, like what Mr. Tanushi said, is like go for the low-hanging fruit first, right?
Yeah.
Because that's, I mean, that's what matters.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. So
that actually happens with students, that they are not good at a certain topic, but a very easy question from that topic has been asked, which they will easily be able to attempt. But they leave it because in their head, they think that this topic is something I don't know. But eventually, that's something that they easily could have answered. So reading it, understanding it, and then attempting is the key.
Yeah, and again,
Yeah.
just to add to the questions that seem difficult, like obviously the paper is not supposed to be easy for everyone to attempt, or that you have difficult questions. And so my only advice would be, when you're tackling those difficult questions, it's not possible for you. I mean, if you are really good at mathematics, then obviously you can ace the paper. But for an average AHL student, it's not possible to know everything, right? There are times where you're going to be stuck solving questions. And so in that case, what I would suggest is try maximizing the number of marks you can get. Let's say if it's an 8-mark question, from inside that, okay, you're not able to, like, you're not going to be able to get those 8 marks. Then my approach would be, okay, how many maximum marks can I get from that question? Can I get 2 marks? Can I get 4 marks? And then attempt it for those 4 marks. So you know that your steps are right. And then obviously you go haywire because you don't know how to solve it. But at least those steps, those initial steps that you're able to solve, you're getting the marks for them. So instead of a 0 and an 8, you're getting a 3 or an 8, or a 4 on an 8. And I think that again then just adds to your total and helps you in achieving a 6 or a 7.
I mean, yeah, I mean, like these grades can push you. As you said, it's a split difference, like between a 6 and a 7 is, matter of a grade
Yeah.
boundary. 3 or 4 points can move you up.
yeah. Or I mean, between also a 3 and a 4, right? So between, passing and not passing. So definitely always go for the low-hanging fruit. If you know you can do a question, like you can get it right, go for it first. And then whatever time you have left, spend that time figuring out the question that you know you're not getting.
Because
So
also
right,
one more.
yeah.
Okay.
No, go on.
I was just gonna say the low-hanging fruit. When you go for the questions that you find easier first, it builds confidence. So in paper 1 and 2, especially like from SL, my strategy used to be not to solve the papers chronologically. I used to solve what I found easiest and most straightforward first, because that builds your confidence. And then that I mean, in essence, to solve a harder question, you need to be calm, right? Your state of mind needs to be calm. And so when you have that confidence after solving the easier questions, you're much more likely to be able to solve the harder questions.
Makes sense. You have a headache out that, okay, I'm passing. Now let's just work towards getting the mark.
Yeah, definitely. So now I just want to open the forum to kind of everyone, all the students on the call. If you have any question about what we discussed, right? So time management for papers 1, 2, and 3. Any questions that you have, you can just raise your hand if you would like to unmute and speak, or you can just put it in the chat. We'll just give a couple of minutes to do this. So any questions that you have about time management, or just about managing time in general, about how much hours per day or per week you should dedicate to studying, please just go ahead in the chat or raise your hand, and I'll call out your name and you can unmute. I think someone has asked, which resources do you recommend to learn and study concepts from, plus resources for revision and practice?
See, to learn and study, I feel the best are your teachers for the concepts at school, your tutors, or if you want to read the concepts on your own, then books are the best. Going for online sources, it's not reliable. You don't know if you just, in fact, the free resources, you don't know if they're reliable, you don't know if they're correct. So always, even if you're referring to some online resource, you should check with your teacher, confirm with them if it's reliable or not. And I would say learning concepts is best done with the teachers. And if you want to go into the detail more, then you can start reading the books. There are plenty of books, Hayes and Harris, Oxford, Pearson. They all work fine. And to practice as well, they're pretty good. Although they're not IB style questions, but they're concept building questions. So from there, you can build your base. And once you've done that, attempting IB questions becomes easier for you.
Yeah, and then for revision and practice, I'd say past papers are the best source for revision and practice. It doesn't get better than that. So my advice would be to solve past papers even from the old syllabus as well, because the concepts have relatively stayed the same. It's just the format that they've changed. They've like categorized it into AI and AAHL. But if you want to, let's say, build onto your calculus knowledge, if you want to solve complex number questions, you can always refer to them. They're built by the IB. It's an IB style question, and yeah, you know it's reliable. So just go through past papers, go through online resources again after confirming with your teachers. But yeah, I think the best way to revise and practice is definitely past papers.
And something else I wanted to
Sorry.
Yeah, no. Something else I just wanted to add about the textbooks like Oxford and Pearson. It's a mistake I made in the beginning of my AA course. Is like Ms. Tanushi rightly pointed out, those questions can only help you with your conceptual understanding. They are not at all IB style questions. So you can get everything, all the questions in the textbook right, but you can still go into the exam and you can still be a bit taken aback by the kind of style of questions that are asked. Because the IB way of questions is very different, okay? They won't they don't feed it right to your mouth, right? You'll have to kind of extrapolate the question from the question itself. So while the textbook questions are great to build your conceptual understanding, that's just the first step. You need to go out there, you need to look at past papers, revision village, whatever you have, to actually practice IB style questions, because practicing just from the textbook is not going to help you at all.
And yeah, I mean, there are also a couple of questions in here. I think about the amount of hours that a student should be studying a week. And so my take on this is, personally, my take on this is it's a bit abstract and it depends from student to student. And I don't think that you can really quantify this number. But one general piece of advice, especially once you have the concepts covered, is to try and do practice exams as much as you can. So AHL students, if you guys are right now starting DP2, you may or may not have already finished your syllabus. So there's probably a chance that you still have some leftover syllabus to cover. So maybe you can't do complete past papers or past paper exams. But if you can compile some IB style questions on all of your concepts, do some practice on at least paper 1 and 2, once a week, a full attempt, with the replicate the exam settings as far as you can. You'll get very used to solving tricky questions under pressure, and you'll know what strategy works for you. And your formatives or your smaller assessments, I mean, they're not gonna cost you grades if you're using solely those to rely on past paper practice. So getting in that that proper exam style practice is very important. And it depends how best you can do that, right? How best you can fit that into your schedule. Obviously, you may find it tough in busy periods to make time to sit for 2 hours at a stretch and do a math paper, right? So it's something that's going to vary. It's not a fixed answer, but the idea is that once you cover a concept, you try and transfer that learning into other areas. and into tricky questions as far as you can.
I
Yeah, and I
also
just
consistency is important. If you've decided to study certain hours in a week, don't clutter it for the weekend or don't clutter it for the week. Do math every day, I would say. Even if you think you can sit for half hour, do it. If you can sit for 2 hours someday, do it. But do it every day, a little every day. Solve two questions if you don't get the time. But consistency is required. If you don't do math every day, you lose the touch. You suddenly feel like, okay, what am I doing now? This doesn't make sense. When you take a break, it doesn't work. So just be consistent, and you'll feel the difference when you be consistent.
Yeah, I also wanted Dheer to, just because a lot of students are asking, I'm in DP1 or I'm about to start AHL. So how many hours per week should I, be studying for? And I'm guessing, all of you are also aiming for that 7. So Dheer, if you can just tell us from your experience, how many hours per week, if you just like an estimate that you spent either revising concepts or just break it down, or like actually doing past papers.
Right. So again, this differs for like from person to person. But my particular experience was that I found it better for me to practice daily over short periods of time than sit and like commit an entire day for maths. Right. I would I'm normal. I would get fed up of studying math for like 5 6 hours in a row. Like so my personal strategy would be to solve math questions 1 hour every day. So that would be 7 hours a week. Apart from like school and all, like coming back from school and then obviously taking an hour to just revise the concepts that have been taught in school. Or if I have any doubts, I'd send an email to the teacher, and he or she would be very happy to respond back. So yeah, definitely be consistent, practice as often as possible. Because again, like Tanushi rightly mentioned, that it's important to have that touch with math. It's the only way you can build your math skills is through practice and consistent practice. So definitely, yeah, just go as per what you believe is the right fit for you, whether you're able to commit 5 to 6 hours a day and then do that just like once or twice a week, or give 1.5 hours every single day throughout the week, whatever works for you. But that's personally what's worked for me, was like being consistent with 1 hour slots every day and practice math. So I kept in touch like in that way.
Yeah. And so I just wanted to say, for everyone that's asking questions about the IA, we will get to that a little bit later. So we'll just keep those questions rounded till then. Someone has asked, I don't really understand what my teacher says during classes in school. So what do you recommend for me to learn concepts on her own, I'm guessing?
If you want to do it on your own, I would say you start with the books, you read the books, and if you still feel that it's not working, because it's going to take a lot of time for you to learn the concepts on your own. That's pretty much why we have teachers to speed up that process. If you sit and do it yourself, you'll have to read, you'll have to comprehend. It takes time. You can also think about taking tuitions. Online tuitions work very well for IB students. You don't have to travel time is saved, and you can also consider a teacher for that. And we all are there to help you out, whatever concept building things that you need, and practicing as well.
Yeah. So even I would say, because that is something that I did try, is learning, concepts on my own, because I found that the teacher that I had, I wasn't learning very well from her. Her teaching style just didn't suit me, and it wasn't very helpful. So when I did get a tutor, that's when I did see a major difference. But again, it's not like you get a tutor and then immediately you see a difference. You need to spend time. You need to put in effort and time working with the tutor, and only then they can help. So even if you get the best tutors out there, you need to be able to put in that time, energy, effort, like Miss Anushi said, consistently.
And you listen to
Yeah.
the tutor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Sanvi is asking about, is tuition needed for math AASL? And so, look, I mean, it's a resource, and it's a resource it'll help you consolidate your knowledge and your learning. And in my opinion, at least, a tutor is a very helpful resource to have, because I mean, when you have someone who's qualified and who really understands these concepts well, they can spend their time imparting that knowledge to you in different ways and in a way in which you can understand it. Because math is it can be a concept can be explained in multiple ways, and often your class teacher will explain it in a particular way, but you don't understand that particular way. When you have a second opinion or a person who can explain it in multiple ways, that helps your interpretation more. And I mean, so again, it's not something that is an absolute necessity, but it's certainly very helpful to have a tutor, even for AASL, because obviously, because math is not, to a lot of people, it's not something that is naturally intuitive. And so because it's not naturally intuitive, sometimes it's hard to grasp, and that's why people struggle with it, which is when a tutor can help, but it's not something that is a necessity.
It also
Yeah.
depends on the student, that how much help do they need. Sometimes
Yeah.
they would need like 3 classes a week, and then they would, make benefit from that. Some of them just take 1 class a week, clear out all their doubts from concepts, from questions, and they're good to go because they're practicing by themselves a lot, and that's all the help they need. So it's really a personal perspective. How much help do you need, and how much are you willing to work hard? That's all.
Yeah. And see, Sanvi, also just from personal experience, I took math ASL and all of DV1 because my teacher's teaching techniques didn't really work with me. I did spend a lot of time studying by myself, so I would spend a considerable amount of time every single week to learn concepts by myself, use the books. But when I did get a tutor eventually, that's when I really saw my growth like kind of accelerate, and that's when I felt like my knowledge was really consolidated in the subject. So again, it
And
differs from person to person, but having a tutor did make all the difference for me for ASL.
and one thing also that I'd like to add about having a tutor is, look, like you when you have a tutor, you shouldn't, like, obviously you need to make sure that you're also doing your own independent practice, and you need to maintain a ratio of, if this makes sense, you need to maintain a ratio of the amount of time that you spend practicing with a tutor to the amount of time you spend practicing alone. Because what this does is it helps you consolidate your knowledge, and it helps you build the paradigm and the confidence that you are able to solve the questions by yourself. And that is critical in an exam setting. I can't reiterate how critical this is to you. If you practice solely with a tutor for your mathematics and you don't take any accountability of it outside of the classroom and outside of your tuitions, it's a recipe for bad things to happen. So I'd strongly recommend that when you have a tutor, you should use them. They're a very, very good resource to have, but you also need to make the effort to practice outside of the tuition. And
Yeah.
this might sound like a lot of work, and it might sound like it's very overwhelming, but if you strategize, if you manage your hours properly, it's not. And I'm telling you this from experience, because I was able to pursue the IB while swimming at a national level in India. So this, breaking it down, managing time for me, and creating a very, very well structured plan helped me to implement this strategy. And even though it seems like it's 3 tiers, right? You get your math from school. Your teacher might assign you some homework, which, okay, it may not be graded, but you're expected to do it. And then you have a tuition, and then you're doing something outside the tuition. So this might seem like a lot of effort for the subject, but ultimately the rewards are quite
Yeah.
quite far-reaching, and it is possible to manage it within the amount of time that you have.
Yeah.
It kind of also prepares you to do the hard work in your life.
Yes,
Exactly. Yes.
definitely. So I'll just take one more question and then we'll move on to our next segment. So Lavi is asking, would you recommend topic-wise questions for past papers or just past papers for students who are starting DV1? So I would say do topic-wise questions from past papers because you haven't covered all the syllabus yet. But if you've finished a unit, then go through the past papers, find all the questions on that unit. Sometimes they mix the units as well. So of course you can't attempt those questions, but find questions specific to that unit and solve them. And when you feel like you've covered enough syllabus that you can actually attempt papers, attempt them. Maybe you won't be able to answer all the questions because you haven't covered all the syllabus. So then reduce the marks and grade it for yourself. Find the mark scheme, and then you'll just be able to gauge the level you're at for whatever you have learned. And for everyone asking for past papers, your schools should be providing them because schools have authorized access to past papers. So your teacher should be able to provide you with the past papers for mathematics. And I think other students have also put a couple of resources in the chat, like IB Docs and Save My Exams. So those are also good for past papers. Now I just wanted to move on and ask Dheer about, because a lot of students asked, how exactly do you study for maths? So now we've covered how much, time commitment on average you need, but like how exactly do you study? So do you only solve past papers? Do you also go back and revise concepts? What exactly did you do?
So initially in DP1, when I was just starting out the course and when we were solving these chapters, after every chapter, our teacher actually sent us like an end of topic revision like booklet that had um, really good like resources, really tough questions, but also like questions that tested your knowledge on the concept. So what I did was I should take that home, I should solve it, and then if I had any doubts, I would again go back to the teacher and like ask him or her to explain the question to me, and then understand, okay, this is the reason why I didn't get the answer. This is what I should have done instead. So I think also recognizing your mistake, knowing how to solve questions is also a very important aspect of studying for math. So what I did was I had like a list of questions that I've gotten wrong in a particular topic, and then I would go through those questions that I got wrong and reattempt them after I know how to solve it, and then check if I've really understood the question or if I'm just like fooling myself. I felt like that really gave me the confidence to actually know that, okay, I'm strong with this concept and like I'm clear with it. I don't need to touch it for some time now. So that's what I did throughout DP1. I was just topic wise questions because again, like you mentioned, it's very I don't think it's beneficial as such to solve entire past papers in DP1 when you've not completed the syllabus. So yeah, just look at textbook resources, look at your teacher for your guidance, um, and yeah, just keep solving questions because that's what I did. If I had a problem, I would go to the teacher. And yeah, as to how I used to study for math, again, it's just past papers. I didn't read notes because for me, I always felt like math was a very hands-on subject. Like you have to practice questions. I personally didn't find any value in reading notes from a particular website. Like I would rather read notes for a subject like biology or English for that matter, rather than math. So I would just focus and dedicate my time and energy to solving questions.
Yeah, I
What
think that's something.
we used to suggest
Yeah.
students was that whenever you're done with the topic, take a A4 size sheet, just write down the summarized notes in a very short way, which you think you might forget later. Like you have the formula booklet, I agree, but then there are certain things which are not in the formula booklet, things you need to remember, approaches that you developed when you were learning it, and you just make, like really short notes, all according to yourself. Don't ask anyone else for notes. Do it yourself, make it yourself, because you know what you might forget 2 months later. And then when you're practicing questions or papers, you'll have this summarized thing with you, which you can just quickly skim through and then quick go to the questions and attempt that. So that is one approach if you feel that you tend to forget the concepts from behind.
Yeah. And another thing I want to ask you, Ms. Tanushi, is how exactly should students study for paper 3? Because my understanding is that paper 3 is something that they don't really do in in DP1 at all. It's something you only start doing maybe mid DP2, sometimes even end if you're really rushing the syllabus. So how exactly should they be studying for paper 3?
Okay, so the thing is that students get overwhelmed. They think that paper 3 is something entirely different. It's not. The syllabus is exactly the same. The concepts that you've learned are exactly the same. That's all the good that they're going to ask. They're not going to ask you things outside of your syllabus. So what you need to do is, before you try to attempt a paper 3, you should be good with all the concepts, because they mix it. They don't ask you a question from one concept. You need to be good at everything. You need to know every concept really well. Once you know that, then it's about practicing paper 3. So paper 3 always creates patterns. It's never independent questions. There are 2 questions in paper 3, and both of the questions have various parts, and you have to attempt it in that order only. Otherwise, it'll be a mess. You won't be able to understand what they're asking unless you do the previous parts. So The concept stays the same. You're good with the concept. Now you just need to develop an approach of attempting paper 3. So there is no way to study for paper 3. For paper 3, you need to attempt paper 3 to understand how to really approach it all. And once you've done that for, like, let's say you attempted 5 paper 3s, that's when you realize the pattern. That's when you see that, okay, this is how it works. That's how the question develops. And once you do that, you realize that it's easier than paper 1 and 2. A lot of students disagree, but it is. It is definitely easier. And the idea here is to just develop the approach, and that's all. Concepts are the same. In fact, they use easier concepts than in paper 1 and 2. So yeah, it's all about attempting it again and again once you're done with your syllabus. That's why they don't introduce in DP1. There's no point, because there are mixed up concepts. It might be that your teacher's not taught you that, so they have to introduce that in DP2 itself. And yeah, just attempt. That's all. Just attempt as many as you can, and you'll get it.
Yeah, and again, for the paper 3 in specific, it's also like treat each question like a story where the question itself is going to direct you in a particular direction. It's going to like nudge you in a sense that, okay, in part A you've done it like this, so in part B the parameters have changed, but they expect you to recognize that, okay, you've done the same thing in part A, you have to do the same thing in part B, but with different parameters. And I think once you realize that, again, it's very, very scoring. It's very easy because treat it like the answers are in front of you. You just have to unpack it and unwrap it. And I think once you get that, once you're able to sort of make that connection, you can breathe through the paper. So yeah, this one piece of advice.
It's all logical. It's just you use your logic. Just think, and you're there. The answer is right in front of you in paper 3, always.
And this is a question actually someone had asked, I think, earlier on, but I think it's very relevant to what we're discussing now is when you're studying before an exam, for example, may it be a final exam, may it be a unit test, how do you know you have done enough? Because I think this applies for all subjects. You always feel like there's more you can do. But I suppose in other subjects, there is a point where you can reach and you're like, okay, I have covered everything that I can. But because Math A, HL has elements like the paper 3, where no matter how much you study, you'll still never know what's going to come. So I think if Dheer, you can shed some light on this, and then Ms. Tanushi, because you are a student who has studied, and obviously you did study enough. So can you tell us, how you gauged for yourself, okay, I have done enough, or what parameters you set for yourself?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question because for me personally, if I remember correctly, it was like even a day before a test or an exam, I still used to make mistakes. Right, but it was those mistakes like slowly started becoming more silly rather than conceptual. And I feel like that was a parameter that I sort of used where I understood that, okay, now it's not my concepts that are not making me get the marks that I want. It's my attention or my awareness to small things. So I feel like that's natural. The nerves do get to you. You do get anxious when you solve the paper, but it's important to just stay focused, trust yourself, believe that you have prepared for your exam, for your test, and just understand that after you've learned the concept, after you've learned the particular syllabus, there's nothing more that you can do. The IB is telling you that this is the syllabus that's going to be covered. This is the content. Once you've learned it, you just need to know how to apply it in the exam, and that's precisely what questions are, right? It's just an adaptation of that content and that syllabus. So just believe in yourself, trust yourself, and I think everyone can do great.
Just preparing for a math test is never enough. One thing that I always tell my students is always have a good night's sleep before your math test. Otherwise, you're going to ruin it. Because math needs attention. It needs your head there. You should be present in the paper. You should not be sleepy. You should not be tensed about anything. Forget all your stress at home. Whatever's happening in your personal life, forget about it. Have a good night's sleep before your math test. Otherwise, you're going to ruin it, no matter how much you've studied. Unlike other subjects, math needs attention. For biology, for chemistry, for any other subject, you can just study and you can just write it out in the paper. For math, you have studied, but now you have to use your head in the paper. You have to constantly think of ideas on how do I solve this question. For that, you need to be well rested and you need to be stress free. Those are two important points I always tell my students, and nobody listens.
Yeah, and just adding on to what Mr. Rishi said, there's coming from like an athletic perspective, because I'm a competitive athlete, something that I realized makes a huge difference, right? Because I mean, they sort of athletics are likened to tests. It's a pressure. It's a moment where you have to perform well. Is you have to be present and you have to be there in that moment. You can't be, and you know that's why this question is so valid. It's like, when do you know when you've studied enough, right? So you're asking that question because you want to be able to be focused on task and not be distracted with the reality of what could have been or what could have happened. So Ibpath will probably be releasing more content on this soon, but it's about figuring out how you can be present within that moment, notice everything sort of around your paper, and sort of pick up all the details. So I mean, this is something that may seem a bit far-fetched to some of you guys, but I mean, for me, it's personally very relevant and has helped me with my academics as well. Um, when you do this is sort of, it seems like it's a practice. You do guided meditations. So these meditations, they last between 5 to 10 minutes. What it's something you just do every day, 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day. That's it. And over a period of time. So let's say within 3 weeks or a month or so, it increases your ability to focus significantly. And so that doubt in your mind of whether or not you've studied enough sort of disappears, because it's irrelevant when you're writing that test. So it disappears when you're writing the test, and you're able to focus on it entirely.
Yeah, definitely. So now I just want to move on to the topic of the IA, because also a lot of you had many questions on this. So the internal assessment is basically your exploration in mathematics, right? Because other than the I, you don't really have any area to explore mathematical concepts, right? So you'll have your syllabus, you'll have your questions based on the syllabus. Now your I is where you can really jump out of the syllabus. You can go into, delve deeper into a theory that you find in a string, or maybe, just learn a whole new concept altogether. An important thing for the IA, for getting a good grade in the IA for AHL, is the use of mathematics, right? Because that's something also a lot of school teachers emphasize on. And so a lot of students think that the use of mathematics is the most significant thing in the IA. So Dheer actually, and I'm also discussing how the use of mathematics only carries 6 marks in the IA. Sorry, between 4 and 6 marks. Don't remember how many marks it is exactly. And the rest of the marks come from everything else, right? So the way that you write it, the way that you present it, your personal connection to the IA topic that you have chosen, right? So there's only a very small portion also of the marks that is coming from the use of mathematics. So you might have chosen a very difficult theory and the use of mathematics might be very high, but the way that you have presented it, the way that you've written it, your personal connection, which ultimately does come out, right, from the background that you write and the conclusion and justification that you write, may be lacking. And overall, even if, like I said, you've used very difficult mathematics, you won't be able to score very well in the IA. So Dee, can you tell us about your IA and maybe just some your own personal insights?
Yeah, sure. Again, like you said, uh, many people fall into this trap that okay, because I've taken the toughest possible math course, my IA has to be like the most complex and most like jargonous sort of IA I've ever written, and that really isn't the case. Because I mean, like the use of mathematics obviously plays a very important part because you can't have simple mathematics in your IA like that has to be very clear. But you don't also have to like delve into these mathematical theories that are taught at a PhD level or that are taught by mathematicians. It has to be something that's personal to you, something that you feel is relevant, and something that you feel you can present best. So for me, like I'm a chess player, right? And I play chess for my life. And I also have family who have a craft and working shop. So my eye was basically finding the surface area volume of a bishop piece. And the reason for that was because I lost a bishop piece while playing chess, and I wanted to see whether it was beneficial for me to create my own with the workshop that I had, or buy a new piece altogether. And that's sort of what I compared. So obviously, this may sound very simple on face value, but the concepts like Bezier curves, setwise functions, all of these are HL topics that add that value of a higher level mathematics that costs you, like, gives you the 4 to 6 marks. But I'd say and I can guarantee you that an IA that is presented better, an IA that's communicated well, but is simpler, is going to score more than an IA that is extremely complicated with the correct mathematics, but it's just extremely complicated and very difficult to understand. So just make that your priority, and also just don't get caught in the trap that, okay, because I've taken an AHL course, I need to deliver like mathematics from university or PhD level. It really isn't the case.
I also feel that if you have taken a very ambitious topic, you're going to waste a lot of time there and you're going to deviate from your syllabus. You need time to study for your final exams as well. Although IA carries a good chunk of your grade, but then there's exams, which is a bigger chunk of grade. So you need to work on that as well. And if you take a very ambitious, a very difficult topic for math IA, you're going to spend a lot of time there. You're going to study for it first, and you're going to work on it. You're going to format it. It'll just take a really long time, and it'll just waste your time because you have a lot of syllabus to do as well. So take up a topic which is not too easy, not too hard, something which is in the balance there, and work towards presenting it well. Now, presentation not only means just formatting. Presentation means reflecting on your math findings, communicating your math. So whatever real life problem that you've taken, that you're approaching, your math should make sense with it. It should solve that problem. If not solve, then at least give you some insight of that particular problem. And you should always be able to write paragraphs about how that math is reflecting on the findings, on the real life applications, how it's helping you conclude something. Your conclusion needs to be finally you have to write a conclusion of the thing that you've done. Your conclusion should make sense. It should have something. It doesn't always have to be a result. It could be that, okay, no, this doesn't work. That is also a conclusion. That is, in science, in math, these things also have meaning, that this doesn't work. So maybe my idea would be to extend this to in this direction, or work on it in this way, which is out of my math scope. I knew this much math, and this particular thing worked. I thought this could have gone in this direction, but it didn't. And that also gives you insights that can also score well. So those are certain things. Now, the criteria on which your math IA will be marked, there are 5 criteria. One is your presentation. Your presentation carries about 4 marks. So that includes if you have taken the correct font, the font size, double spacing, all of the figures are marked, the tables are marked, the table of content is clearly written, page numbers are written. All of these things come in the presentation. So those 4 marks every student can get. That's like super easy. You just have to format it. That's all. Then comes math communication. That's again for 4 marks. It's about the symbols you're using. If you use sigma for standard deviation, then use sigma. Don't use something else. If you're using mu for mean, then you have for throughout your IA, you'll use mu for mean. So those symbols and everything, they matter. That's your math communication, how you are presenting your math. Then the next one is your personal engagement. I've also noticed all of my students who have made an IA with a genuine personal interest. Some, of course, lie about it, but the ones who genuinely have an interest, they always score better because they're able to give it a perspective which some other student might not be able to, because they're so much interested and they're delved into that particular area that they have a personal touch to it. They have an approach, a direction that they can give to the IA. So the recommendation is to, have a genuine personal interest. If you don't have it and you're lying about it, that's also okay, but then lie really well. Like, try to present that really, really well. And another criteria is reflection. That's about reflecting on your findings. Whatever you found out, that carries about 3 marks. So it's about how you can, whatever you found out makes sense, and just talk about it. And of course, you have to stay concise. That comes under presentation. If you elaborate too much, if you've done a certain math and that has to be repeated for the next part of your IA, then you can put it in the appendix. Don't repeat it. Don't do it again and again. Nobody wants to read the same math. So make it concise. Don't make it in a way that somebody is bored while they read it, right? Then use of math is again 6 marks. Use of math is all about what you've learned, whatever you're putting in it, and doing it correctly. You can't, if you have wrong results, you lose marks. So you have to be proofreading your IA again and again and again to check for any sort of mistakes. And yeah, that's how you can score a 20. If you
And
are
I
able
just-
to get
Yeah. Yeah, and I just wanted to add the I is actually the same for SL and HL. What I mean by that, the criteria is the exact same, the number of marks is the exact same. Now, the only criteria where your teacher will judge you differently between HL and SL is the use of mathematics, right? So the use of mathematics for HL, you are expected to, maybe by the teacher, by the examiner, but you are expected to use a level of mathematics like don't try to do MYP mathematics, like finding a pattern, right, and just proving the pattern, or proving a very simple theory, because you will lose out in use of mathematics, and it does carry 6 points. So that is somewhere where you should try to score. But like Dheer very rightly mentioned, you're not expected to do some PhD level mathematics or university level mathematics. Staying within your syllabus, but choosing the right topic, forming the right kind of investigation will get you 20 out of 20 or 7. Another very important tip that I realized for myself, even at the ASL level, and that I saw with my peers who were doing HL, is work very closely with your teacher, because your teacher is going to grade your IA. So even if it's moderated, right, there's only a sample size that's sent for moderation to an examiner. So at the end of the day, either you will retain the same mark that your teacher has given, right, which is most likely what will happen, because most samples that go for moderation retain the same mark, which means you will remain with the mark that your teacher has given you. So your teacher needs to understand your IA. There shouldn't be a disconnect between you and your teacher. If this is something that I think also benefited me a lot, is when I worked with my teacher a lot. So I worked, I came up with different topics, and then I worked with her to finalize which one is the best, right? Because when you get the teacher's approval, what it also does is it gives the teacher confidence in you, right? And like I said, at the end of the day, your teacher is going to grade your IA. So you might do something very difficult, but if your teacher doesn't see the point in it, if your teacher just doesn't think it's appropriate for your IA, it's all for nothing, because ultimately you're not going to get the grades that you want.
kind of like satisfy your teacher and you'll be good to go.
Definitely, definitely satisfy your teacher. I would say that it's something that helped me also, because you get that consistent feedback from the teacher as well. And it's easy to do that if you work with them from the very beginning, right? Because then they know that you have, they know the entire process that you've gone through, and also authenticity of your IA, which is again very important, because having your IA is written by someone else is something that does happen. So there should not even be a hint of doubt in your teacher that the eye has been completely produced by you. That is also something that you should definitely keep in mind. And yeah, guys, I just want to again open the forum to all of you. I know you have a lot of questions on the eye, so you can just use the chat or raise your hand to ask any questions you have about the eye. I think we already have one.
Yeah, personal engagement is 3 marks.
So I've chosen an IA topic and have a personal connection with the topic, but it is related to calculus of variations, which would require me to study quite a bit about this topic. I can't really think of any IA topics, so how should I proceed now?
I don't think so. Calculus of variation is something you should delve into right now. If it's like the very basic idea of it, you might be able to do it. But if you need to get deeper into calculus of variations, you don't want to do it. It will take up a lot of your time. I would suggest you go for some other topic, or maybe, can you tell me what's the topic, Mayank?
And Mayank, something else I want to say is, maybe if there's nothing in your like personal interest that is inspiring the IA, like Ms. Tanushi said, you can lie about it, but lie really well. It's something I did for my IA, and it did work. I was able to convince my teacher, and I did get the points that I needed for personal connection. I got 3 out of 3 for personal connection. If you can do that, I think go ahead with it. Many students do it. So it's not something that you should fret about. But yeah, obviously, if something from your personal interest does inspire your IA, go ahead with that.
Mayank, I don't think so. You should go with this topic. You will get into really higher math, and you'll have to come back eventually. So I would suggest don't begin with it. And the giveaway of this webinar is some IA ideas. Maybe you can take something from there.
Yeah. At the end of this webinar, we are giving away a list of AHLI ideas. So don't copy it, but do use it to kind of inspire your thinking and brainstorm a little bit more. So yeah. Do we need an IA for every subject? Arnie, yes, there is an IA in every single subject in the DP. So your 6 subjects will have 6 IAs, so 1 IA for each subject, but they are different in all subjects. So that's something that you will, your class or subject teacher will brief you about the IA for that particular subject.
We also have online course on IAs coming up on detailed explanation on how to make an IA.
How can you find a good IA idea? Is there a process to finding a concentrated topic for your IA?
Sandy first. Yeah, Dheer, you can go ahead.
Go ahead, that's fine. Yes, I was just saying that one would be to start as early as you can. Once you've sort of covered some syllabus in DP, ideally by let's say midway through DP1 or like the end of DP1 is when you should sort of have an idea of what you want to do your math IA in. Because I personally took the summer break between DP1 and DP2 to complete my math IA. I felt like that was a good use of my time, and I also reduced the pressure I had to complete my IAs in DP2 when you have your college admissions and you have your applications, and also preparing and studying for the actual board exams. So maybe if that's something that works for you, you could do that. But yeah, look at past IA topics. Look at like blogs that sort of provide you with couple of IA ideas. But then don't copy that because it's very easy to copy it. It's not meaningful, and you're not gonna score well. So tweak it to your personal preference. Tweak it to how you can engage in that IA, and then just like check with your teacher. Get feedback from your teacher. See what she likes, he or she likes, and then just take it from there. But I definitely consult your teacher throughout this entire process. Yeah.
They're asking about, a lot of them are asking about if they can use the previous topic. You cannot use the exact same thing, but you can manipulate it. So I'll give you an example. Say there was an IA based on what is the optimal angle at which you should throw a stick so that your dog can go fetch it, but it goes as far as possible. So there's some calculus involved, there's projectile motion involved. And similar concepts would be applied for a javelin throw. So maybe you can tweak it to something similar, but not exactly the same. So yeah, you can just manipulate it, but don't do the same exact thing. It'll be plagiarism.
Yeah. I mean, I think definitely allow past topics to inspire you. I was inspired for actually my IA topic by an IA that I had seen. It was about, I think they optimized perfume bottles to find like the most aesthetically pleasing design. And then I got inspired to look at optimizing the shape of wine bottles so that they use the least amount of packaging, but then still have enough wine stored. So, allow them to inspire you, but don't do the exact same thing. Just take it, take the mathematics and put it in a different context altogether. And also someone called Shalini had asked a bit prior when she should start her math AAHLIA, that she's a DP1 student. So I think Dheer mentioned that the summer between DP1 and DP2 is really the best time to work on your IA.
But honestly, I feel from the beginning, not beginning, but halfway through DP1, you should start reading IAs. you
Hmm.
should start exploring how people have written it. So what happens is sometimes you're just going through your day and it just clicks to you, maybe I can make my IA on that.
Yeah.
So have a context that what are IAs and what is to be done, so that if something clicks, something you feel you can work with, you will have that idea with you. Although some IAs have complex math, and that math you've not done yet, so you might not understand what they've done, but you will definitely understand what it's about and what it's including. So
Yeah.
that would still give you an idea about what you can do. So still, I think just keep reading IAs. Just decide that, okay, in a week I want to read one IA.
Yeah. And guys, as we're just heading towards the end of the webinar, if you have any questions, just please let them flow in. This is kind of your opportunity to get your questions answered by any of us. Maybe you're the IA, maybe about the other papers or just skills, time management. You can just put them in the chat. So sitting the AHL exam next November, when should I start doing past exams? I think you should start now.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, just start from today pretty much, because you should have covered enough syllabus, to be able to complete most of the exams. Maybe you won't be able to do all of them. So just start from now. Is Byju's good for learning concepts and practicing with their questions and test papers they take for Math ASL? I think anything is good for learning concepts, because mathematical concepts are not going to change regardless of any board, any curriculum.
Maybe
Practicing, yeah.
maybe they can ask people who have taken Byju's what was their experience, and from there they can decide.
Yeah. Or, even for yourself, maybe you can just compare the Byju's questions with the IB Math ASL questions, because like I mentioned, doing questions from the textbook or from places like Byju's is good for conceptual understanding, but it is not preparing you for the math papers that the IB gives. And I'm speaking from experience. You can get everything correct, but you're still going to into the test, and you'll be completely blank, because the way of asking questions is just so different. And your expectations also, you're required to do the steps. You get marked for the steps. So if you've done the right steps but gotten the wrong answer, you're still getting marked for the steps. So just make sure you understand, go through past papers, maybe go through solved past papers, look at the answer scheme, and then that should give you a good idea about the kind of questions that are asked.
What would you recommend beforehand for HLAA for the student starting DP1? Make sure your MYP concepts are extremely clear. Make sure your math base is good, and go with the basics of the first 3 units. You can download the guide, and from there you can start with the preliminary topics of the first 3 units. Not more than that. You don't need anything else.
Another thing I would say for students who have not started DP yet, please ensure that you do need to take AHL. Because if it's not a requirement for the degree that you want to pursue, if it's not a requirement for the university at all, then you're much better off taking AASL and putting in the time and effort to score well in that. So talk to your school, college counselors or external guidance counselors and ensure that AHL is a requirement for your further education.
Yeah, I mean, and one thing also to add to that is that when you first start the DP, especially if you're transitioning from another curriculum, so whether it be an Indian curriculum or any other curriculum for that matter,
IGCSE, yeah.
IGCSE, any curriculum, it's a bit of a shocker. There's a learning curve for sure. So when you take math AHL, the learning curve only gets steeper, and it becomes harder to grasp the concepts because you've already been overloaded with that much content, even though whatever it may be, 40% of the syllabus is the same. Getting used to this new style of math, and on top of that, having the pressure to take it at higher level and so much more content than SL, it becomes quite daunting. So take HL if you really need to take it for your college applications, because there are people who will still take SL math, or even take AI HL math and still get into the preferred desired majors, depending on what the majors are in great schools. Like a peer of ours got into USC who had taken AI HL math.
Yeah.
And so take it really if it's a necessity.
You can also check your targeted universities. You can just check the website. and just see if they require is AA or AI, and from there you can decide what you want to take.
Yeah, and another thing, this question actually asks, the next one asks if A or HL or AI HL would be a better fit. I think most students have this misconception that AI HL is easier than AA HL. So Miss Tanushi is actually a AA HL teacher and an AI HL teacher. So I think she'll be able to tell you, and she'll agree with this, that it's not necessarily easier. It's still a very rigorous and demanding course.
It is. It's
So
just some students perform well with stats as a bigger portion of the syllabus, and some with
and the calculator, yeah, the
Yeah.
difference is also because you have the calculator for all the papers. So, the manual calculations is out of the picture, which is a significant thing for many students, right? So that's something you should take into consideration. And Nishita, I would strongly recommend speak to a college counselor. If the economic degrees, the country that you're looking at or the colleges that you're looking at, if they're okay with AI or AHL, I would say, then just take your pick, play to your strengths. If you feel like, okay, I perform better with a calculator, as a tool, then go with AIHL. But speak to a guidance counselor. You can do your own research as well.
There was one student who took AIHL and he went into an economics course. That university allowed that, but then he had to take a course on multivariable calculus because he did not have AAHL IB. So sometimes you have to take extra courses because you've not done AAHL and IB, because overall AAHL covers everything except for the stats part of AIHL. Everything else is there. So sometimes you have to take those extra courses, and AHL might just save you from that. So yeah, talk to a college counselor. That's the best thing you can do.
Should you stick to only one book for math like Hodder, or is it better to have varied learning? Varied learning for sure. Do not stick to one book. Look at different books, look at different styles of questions, different websites. Yeah, don't stick to one. Maybe you can stick to one book for, reading and understanding, but for questions or examples, solved questions, look at different sources.
Yeah, and you can understand the same concept back differently, right? It's the same thing. It's just different approach to understanding, which is very critical when you're building your ability to transfer learning.
What is the difference between AIHL and AAHL? So the major difference is that AIHL has an emphasis on statistics because it is calculator based. You'll use your calculator at a much, more sophisticatedly than you would in AAHL. So statistics plays a major role, and then AAHL you have more emphasis on calculus. It's more like traditional mathematics and manual calculations. That's the difference. I would suggest go to the subject guides, subject guide for AAHL, subject guide for AIHL. Look at the assessments. What is the difference in the papers? What is the difference in the IA? And what are the different units? So 5 units for AHL, 5 units for AIHL. So what are these different 5 different units? And then you'll get a good understanding of the difference. How do you recommend to learn how to answer IB questions other than past papers? Dheer, do you have anything to add over here other than past papers, how they can answer or maybe practice other than past papers?
Yeah, I think you could always ask your teacher for resources.
Yeah.
Or maybe he can set questions, or he or she can set questions for you. Like they could give you end of topic worksheets like what my teacher did, or they could give you questions in like on topics that you're finding difficult. But I think that only happens after you communicate that with your teacher. So if you want more questions apart from past papers, you can always reach out to your teacher. And again, textbooks, they're a great resource. You won't get the IB style of questions, but if you want to practice a particular concept, they're a great resource to have. In fact, like what I also did was I watched YouTube videos from a couple of YouTube channels. So some of them actually solved papers and they would explain their thinking. Some of them would have these animated videos explaining a particular concept. So let's say if you're having trouble learning from your teacher at school, you could always go to YouTube, search in like the concept you're having a difficulty in. And like I guarantee you, there'll be like tons of videos of teachers that are explaining the same concept to you. So you could always YouTube as a resource as well if you're ever struggling. And if you're learning visually rather than reading a textbook or reading a blog, for example.
Yeah. Also, Dheer, do you think you could maybe drop the name of these YouTube channels? I think some of the students are asking for it.
So yeah, so I remember Revision Village was one
Yeah.
YouTube channel that I used. And apart from that, I can just check and get back on.
Yeah, I think OSC revision is also one that makes videos on certain like math revision concepts and stuff. So that's one more thing. Then
Art is asking about GDC. You should use the GDC which everyone else in your class is using.
yeah,
It's recommended because if let's say there's some problem you're facing with your GDC, at least you'll be able to ask your friends or your teacher that how do I fix that.
and you
If you're
use your calculator for 2 papers, so it's very important that you know how to use it very well.
yeah, so it should be the same as everyone's using in the class.
Yeah. So he said his school doesn't provide one, so it's up to him. So but our school provided a Casio calculator, and it's fairly easy to use once you get the hang of it. And I think it's cheaper as well. I think that's why most schools provide a Casio calculator. Many more resources available for, like, if you're not able to figure something out, you'll easily find a YouTube video that shows you how to do it. If Ishika, if you can switch to AIHL if you're finding AHL hard, but that depends on your school. So most schools maybe will give you the first 2-3 months of DP, and then after that you will have to make your final choice. Maybe not even 2-3 months. It depends on the school.
Yeah, it's easier to shift from HL to SL, that they allow.
Yeah.
After quite some time, but then shifting from AA to AI is a huge jump.
It is.
So
It is. Yeah.
yeah, so it either has to be done in the beginning or not at all.
Sanvi, the letter of recommendation depends on what you want to pursue in university. So if you're pursuing, for example, economics in university, then get a letter of recommendation from your economics teacher and your math teacher, because it's related to economics. Again, another thing for letter of recommendations is you should get it from a teacher who knows you very well and who can speak highly of you, and just knows you in and outside of class. So that's something that you should keep in mind. Also, Lavi, what if students did not do MYP with the IGCSE? That's fine. In terms, like I said, the mathematical concepts don't change. It's not new version of mathematics or anything, but just the style of questions will be different. So I would suggest look at past papers and practice consistently, so you get used to that style of questions and used to answering those style of questions.
Yeah, and like even me, for example, like I switched from IGCSE to the IB, and I took AdMath in IGCSE. But so what I realized like after doing DP was that my AdMath knowledge translated to AASL like knowledge. Like I could while obviously we were learning the ASL syllabus, I could understand, okay, like I've done this in AdMath before, so it gave me that sort of advantage. So don't like the point I'm trying to make is that don't feel like you need MYP as a prerequisite for the DP. The concepts are the same, and in fact IGCSE is also very helpful in many ways. So it's definitely possible. I'm an example of it, and yeah, I think again, like Sanjana rightly mentioned, just practice and focus on the concepts of them.
Is saying that he feels IGCSE prepares you better for DP. Parth, it really depends on how well you've done your MYP. So if you do MYP really well, it definitely prepares you well for DP. So does IGCSE. It's just that you need to be really, I would say, good with whatever you've done in 10th grade, whichever board you're from. If you're I myself have done CBSE for 11th and 12th, and I understand IB really, really well. For maths, especially, I can't say this about all the subjects, but for math, it's just the basic idea. That doesn't change with boards. That doesn't change universally. Math is the same everywhere. It can't be changed. So if your idea of math is good, if you enjoy math, if you're intuitive with math, no matter where you come from, IB, you'll be able to ace IB.
Definitely. And I think the important thing is, as long as your mathematical understanding is good, really keep an open mind. Okay. So whether you're coming from CBSE, SSC, ICSE, IGCSE, or even MY, you have to keep an open mind. Just allow yourself to learn, the the new, because DP does have its own specific way of asking questions, right? So it does require different kind of thinking. That's for sure, right? We're not saying that if you've done well in IGCSE, you'll be acing it in the DP. You do need to adapt. You do need to be flexible. But if you're willing to do that, yeah, you'll definitely be able to succeed in AHL. Anushka, so Dheer has put a couple of YouTube channels for Math AHL, which you can go through. So he said Revision Village, Juliana Maths, Mad Maths. These are some of the channels that he used. And there's
And you
OSC revision as well.
also have
Yeah, so Teacher actually also has a lot of resources. So they have question banks or just exemplars, things like that, if you want to visit their website.
Sanjana, you can put Sadia's contact here for the students if they want. So this is the contact person if you need any help with IB. All the services I mentioned in the beginning are available, and you can contact her if you need to book a trial session or anything at all.
Yeah, and so you'll have so actually for those of you who weren't here in the beginning, Miss Tanushi is a tutor at Teacher. So you'll have the opportunity to learn with tutors like her. Again, tutoring sessions are not necessary, but they do help you accelerate your growth. So it depends on you, differs from person to person. So make the right choice for yourself. I've just put the contact number of Sadia in the chat. So, you can just mention anything that you'd like help with, and she'll make sure to connect you with the required teacher. Okay, guys, if there are no more questions, I think we'll wrap up today's webinar. Thank you so much, Ms. Tanushi and Dheer, for coming to this webinar, giving us your time and answering all of the questions. I hope that all of you have found something that can help you from this webinar. So yeah, thanks a lot to both of you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining.
Of course. Thank you so much for
appreciate your
joining.
time.
Yes, definitely. Sanvi, the recording will be shared with everybody. So
it'll be on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, we'll put the link on our Instagram page, so everyone will be able to access it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay.
Sanvi, do you have anything else you'd like to ask? Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for joining. Okay, I think that went really well, guys. I'm just gonna stop recording.
Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.